Starts.
together.
Yeah.
What are cookies? They're so good, Rabbi. Really good.
You can rest assured. You can rest assured. I have nothing. I have nothing to do with the cookies.
You know what? I gotta try the chocolate one. Oh, yeah. So I'm gonna go online because people will
Here. What? Who's hanging up on you?
Oh yeah, let me go online with a talk.
Okay, we're online. So now before we start, there's some words for Richard.
Words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom for Richard.
Okay, everybody, I'm leaving on to next Tuesday. Not today, but next Tuesday, the 28th. Very sorry to leave you. I'm going back to I'm going to San Diego, where our main headquarters is. I'll be there until I'm trying to get all verklempt here. I'll be there until the high holidays, and then I'm going to read the Maftir, the Torah, and if you come, you can hear me read the Maftir. The rabbis know about this yet, okay? But we'll tell them later. All right. Rabbi says all text. What is the true meaning of peace in our lives? I don't know, but I think it has to do with cake. Okay. And why do we wish each other Shabbat Shalom? Well, it's actually Good Shabbos. We don't say Shabbat Shalom, we say Good Shabbos, which is Yiddish. We wish that because what else are you going to say? What's the matter with you? Okay. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? And I think that's about it. What else is there? Oh,
you're supposed to say words of
wisdom. Yeah.
Words of wisdom.
What is the true meaning of peace in our lives? How to achieve real peace with someone who thinks, says, or acts exactly opposite from you? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you something. There's a lot of people act differently than I do, opposite of I do. Rabbis actually acts opposite I do, but we still get along very well. Okay, now I'm going to introduce the rabbi. Okay, don't leave. Stay online. He's coming. Where are you? Okay, he's coming online. Here he is. I'm going to introduce Rabbi Shlomi Tabi.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Piece of cake. Guys, cookies are so good. These are kosher. Should you do this?
Most of them are.
I want only the kosher ones. There's no way of telling. If the rabbis eat it, then it's questionable.
So you won't be here next Tuesday?
No.
I'll be on airplane. You're such a staple of Tuesday. Thank you. You've been on for about 4 months. 3 months. 3 months.
This is offline? What does it say offline?
They're going to
Anyone went on the link?
South Pole. For Christmas time?
Okay.
I'm not South
Are
Pole.
we on?
Cruise.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, one of those, those research type ships.
What? I'm asking inside Google.
We can put our tefillin on there together.
We'll put on tefillin where?
Down by where the penguins are, down at Antarctica.
Oh, at Antarctica.
Okay, so you'll get to learn the unusual halachot about how to measure the beginning of Shabbat when in polar areas.
Yeah. That we had a guest here that was here for Shabbos. That was in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Okay, here. My wife's telling me that we can hear. אוקיי. בסדר ישראל, אני אנסה להגביר את הקול. Okay, there we are. So, it was a big Tana, Avi Meir Baal HaNes. Richard was in his burial place. He's buried in the north of Israel. What's going on? In the north of Israel. And he used to give a sermon on Friday nights. After the prayer, before the prayer. Anyway, it was a very interesting sermon, and a lot of people would stay after the prayer to hear the sermon. The lecture was a very important and prominent rabbi, and amongst the people, there was also one woman that used to listen to the sermon. She enjoyed it a lot, and one time, Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes spoke a little longer than usual. And that lady waited till the end of the lecture and went home. And when she came home, it was already past dinner time. And in those days they didn't have electricity. There was candles. We light Shabbat candles. You know why we light Shabbat candles, right? This is have light in the house, to have just to be able to eat, with lights on. You don't have electricity, so they were still can't hear anything.
Who says so?
No, I'm having people
No one can hear
writing
me
for me.
Can I go back online and talk again?
Wait, let me try without this. Wait. So, okay. Okay. You can have as many cookies as you want, Richard. It's the last time you're going to see any of these cookies. So, unless I'll FedEx you. I'll FedEx you great rates. Great rates FedEx. To send it. So Rabbi Meir was extending. He was saying a lecture. It was longer than usual. The lady came out. The candles were already out. There was not much left. And the husband got so upset with her that she came late. And he told her, "You cannot come in here until you go back to Rabbi Meir and you spit in his eyes, because he has just ruined the whole Shabbos for me. Instead of sitting with my wife and my family having a nice Shabbat meal, he was giving a lecture, no consideration with the people who need to get home. If you want to go back into this house, you got to go to Rabbi Meir and spit in his face, spit in his eyes." The woman was completely shocked. She didn't know what to do. She went back to her parents' house. Rabbi Meir heard what had happened with the woman. And he said, he said that he had an issue with his eyes. He had some disease with his eyes. And the only remedy that he has, if somebody could spit in his eyes. So that's what he said. He published, he made a big note outside. And he said, if somebody could come, spit in his eyes. So the lady heard what happened. And, she thought, hey, that's a nice coincidence, right? But of course, she didn't know what to do. I mean, she's not going to go spit in his eyes. So she went to Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir said, "Yes, I'd like you to spit in my eye. I think this would bring remedy to my eyes." And he said, "You should spit in my eye 7 times. 7 times spit in my eyes. Go back to your husband and tell him, you had commanded me to spit once. I spitted 7 times. Isn't that better?" And the students who were there, they couldn't take it any longer. I mean, he said he needs somebody to spit in his eyes. That's one thing. But actually doing it, the lady coming and is about, they wanted to stop her. Rabbi Meir told them, "I will do everything in my might, and I will give up my honor and my dignity in order to make peace between husband and wife." This is how great peace it is. Normally, when people live together, we speak about shalom bayit. It's a term in Hebrew, also translated to English. It's said by itself, shalom bayit or shalom bayit, as it's read in Hebrew. But peace in the home is the literal translation of this item. And this has to do actually with next week's portion more than this week. In Israel, they're reading the next week's portion, Parashat Bechukotai. And we want to talk a little bit about the concept of peace. And also today, we are going to tell you the story of Jesus. What happened with Jesus? How did he come from a Jewish scholar to Jesus Christ? Until the Christ part. That's already not we're not liable for that part. Yeah, you speak to the Romans. They'll tell you the whole legend of that part of his life. Or death, kind of. Yeah. No. We're talking about Jesus, and it's written in the old Talmud. His name is kind of rendered to because they didn't want the censorship over in Europe, and But in the newer versions of Talmud that were printed in the past 100 or so years, his name actually appears. So you read the old Talmud, something is missing. You read the new Talmud, the newer editions, his name is print way there. Anyway, so let's look at what the Torah says about peace. What's so special about peace? The Torah is telling us if we follow the rules, everything goes well. If you follow my statutes and observe my commandments and perform them, I will give you rains in their time, the land will yield its produce, and the tree of the field will give forth its fruit. Your threshing will last until the vintage, and the vintage will last until the sowing. You will eat your food to satiety. That's how they call it? It's like satiated, right? Yeah, that's what I saw. Okay, and you will live in security in your land, and I will grant peace in your land, and you will lie down with no one frightening you. I will remove wild beasts from the land, and no army will pass through your land. You like those things? It's a nice, all we need to do is follow the rules. Huh, Richard? What do you think?
I understand. Which one the wild beasts? What is the wrong?
Wild beasts, they usually bite, or do other things that are
Wow. That's
wild beasts.
even Mr. East are doing grand things in there.
You see that? Only God could do that. No Trump and no anyone. Yeah. Rashi says, what is this whole peace? Rashi says, our grant peace. Here is food and here is drink. But if there's no peace, there is nothing. Scripture therefore states, after all this blessing, I will grant peace in the land. From here we learn that peace is equal to everything else. And so, this is illustrated in our morning prayers when we say, blessed are you, O Lord, who makes peace and creates everything. We say it just before we read the Shema every day in the morning prayer. We say that blessing, who makes peace and creates everything. Making a peace, like Reuben states very wisely, making a peace is no easy assignment. And I think the bigger the gap is, the harder the task to attain and to achieve and to sustain real peace. So really, what is this peace? What is He promising us? And what do we say about this peace that appears so many times apparently in our prayers without even noticing? Let's see, Al-Qudsi Muni says, peace is the most favorite of all blessings. It is also the ending of the prayer. We say every time we end the prayer, Oseh Shalom B'Romav, when we finish the Kaddish, when we finish 3 times a day, every Kaddish, right? Every prayer, Oseh Shalom B'Romav, He who makes peace in the worlds above. And the ending of the priestly blessing. We remember this when you do in the holidays. Shalom. Right? We say the ending of the priestly blessing, the blessing that the priests are like mediums. They're connected to God. They articulate the words of God on behalf of God to us, the people. And what is the last word? What is the most meaningful blessing? Shalom. Right, well, we answer. That's our response. The ending of the priest is, since what is the use of all blessing if there's no peace? No, I said the ending of prayer and the ending of Kaddish. Yeah. I said the two things, the ending of prayer and the ending of Kaddish. The ending of prayer, that's when you walk 3 steps back, when you finish your personal encounter with God Almighty. And the end of Kaddish has the same virtue indeed. So this peace appears to be in many, multiple occasions in our prayers. And on most cases, it holds on to the most significant of all. So we just said what Rashi said. God is giving us all these blessings, food, drinks, abundance, everything. Nothing is worth unless there's peace. So what is that peace? Is it peace with our enemies? Is it peace between ourselves? Is it a piece of cake, like Richard was trying to argue, which of course has a... Wendy, you're enjoying it. Wendy is it? Piece of cake. Okay, so people usually, when you hear peace, what do you think? Marty, when you hear peace, what do you think? Peace is... What is in your eyes? The opposite of war, perhaps? Or, yeah? Comfort and quiet. What if it's too quiet, Marty? You can rest assured. Let me challenge you. If you were to choose between peace or love, what would you choose? Does love transcend? Demery, does love transcend peace? Yeah, you think so. I think so too. I think love has more, but we're wrong. By God, peace is the most significant of all. What is that peace? Why is it so important? So people often don't refer to as quiet, tranquility and all that. Peace is just, it may be because I'm Israeli. And for us, peace is, just not firing rockets at our children. That would be sufficient, okay? We'll settle with that, okay? Love us, don't love us, just don't fire rockets, okay? We'll be okay. Everything else is a bonus, right? But most people, peace is a state where there's no war. But what if this is the case? Then why is the Torah telling us, Look at the next one. Or Chaim says, why did the scripture promise peace in the land after saying you will live in security in the land? Isn't it redundant? If peace is just living in security, then it should be redundant. Why not, Reuben? So you're saying, but true security, you're saying true security even in a state of war, the fact that you are winning the war means that you are in security? Well, the enemy could always do some damage. I mean, obviously, that's interesting. That's an interesting point you have. Reuben was saying that even having security doesn't mean that there's peace. Because Or Chaim is trying to argue, if God is saying you will live in security in your land, then what is peace? What does God want to promise us? So Reuben was trying to say that there could be a state where there's still war and there's still a level of security. Also, we wish a newlywed, a couple that are getting married, we say ahava ve'achva shalom ve'ut, love and companionship, peace and comfort, or whatever the translation is. We see love has its stake and peace also has its stake. So besides love, peace should also be there. What is that peace that we're trying to find out? And this comes even more interesting in Hebrew, because in Hebrew we greet each other with the word shalom. Shalom is peace, right? Yeah, shalom is the same word. You know that, right? We wish each other shalom. Even Chinese people, when sometimes they write me email, they say shalom. I want to come Friday night, shalom. So yeah, so what? So now you're going to get free dinner because you know how to write shalom? I'll answer, you're not coming, ni hao. So what? Yeah. The first one to say shalom, as not as a hi but as a bye, was Yitro. Yitro, the father-in-law of Moses. When Moses told him, he came home and he said, don't ask what happened. What? There was this bush, it was burning, and it wasn't consumed, and I spoke to God. You go drink something, it's too hot outside. And he tells him, God revealed himself to me, and he told me I should go back to Egypt, I should get my people, let my people go, the whole story. And Yitro says, Lech leshalom, go in peace. He says to him, go in peace. We have that term. Also, I think it's used in English as well, go in peace, right? Is it normally for people who have passed? Is it not reserved to that one, right? It's, yeah. Manzo. So the Mishnah says that, yeah, so is this a term, go in peace? You could say that. It's not very common, though, to say it to someone. Okay. Here's what the Mishnah says. Our sages decree that a person should greet his fellow shalom in God's name. Why in God's name? Maimonides explains on the Mishnah. Shalom is one of God's names, so Gidon built there an altar to the Lord and called it God Shalom. To this day it stands in Ofra of the Abizat, Avi Ezri. So according to Rambam, one of God's names is actually Shalom. By the way, Richard, the reason why in Yiddish and also in English, in other languages, you would refrain from saying Shabbat Shalom, you'd say Good Shabbos, right? Because Shalom is the name of God. And when recited in a place that's improper or in a context that's improper, that's what Maimonides brings, that one of the names of God is Shalom, yeah? So, but why do we wish, what? No, that's one of the things. One of the translation of the word shalom, besides being peace and being hello and being greeting and being, all the other things, it's also one of the names of God. It is not considered to be the acknowledged name of God, because God has several names over that. Could you please stop doing that? Thank you. I mean, you're worse than Richard. I got to tell you. So what is this Shabbat Shalom? The Shla brings it. This is brought in Or Chaim in the name of Shla. It says, when greeting someone on Shabbat, we usually say Shabbat Shalom or Good Shabbat. As this way we remember the day of Shabbat is sanctified. Remember, the name of God is embedded within that greeting of Shabbat. Why do we celebrate Shabbat? Why do we commemorate Shabbat?
The reason why we have Shabbat, by the way, we spoke about it several times when we brought Shabbat. Whenever we stop what we're doing, when we rest on Shabbat, this is an acknowledgement of God. This is saying, basically, I know God had created the world in 6 days, and on the 7th He rested, and He commanded us to work 6 days. You hear that? Work 6 days and rest on the 7th. I know. Yes.
You said
Lech b'shaloch leshalom. Yeah, go in peace.
there's actually a lech lecha.
Correct. Yeah.
Is that in there? Is that lech is that in there?
Well, lech lecha. The meaning of it is lech lecha. Is it's go to yourself. And that's the topic on its own. God is revealing Himself to Abraham. He's giving him the first commandment. The first time God speaks to Abraham and tells him what to do, He says, go to yourself. And He says, basically, you're not just doing what I want you to do, but you're fulfilling yourself. This is one of the foundations of religion, theology, as a general thing. When people practice and observe, it's not just you do it for someone else. It's basically you're rediscovering who you are. The lech. The word lech is the same. Lecha. It ends lecha. Lecha means to you, which doesn't make any sense. Syntax. Lech lecha, go to you. Go somewhere. Well, a lot of things make sense when you understand them. Okay, so I'm going to explain. So the first, what? For yourself. Okay.
If Shalom Aleichem there, it means just a salutation and not a prayer.
No, I'm about to explain. Yeah, okay, if it is, yeah.
If it's neither just a salutation, mention of those 3 sentences also the Kohen say.
Right. I agree. So 1, 2, 3 here. The first one is Shabbat candles. Like we said in the story we brought, why Shabbat candles constitute? Why did it start? It started because people, didn't have electricity, and you want to eat you want to sit down for dinner. It's nice when there's light. There's no light, you can't see what you're doing. In those days, by the way, things were much more simple. Steve, you would have loved living there if you weren't there. You work at the day and you sleep at night. You have daylight and you have no light. Okay, that's very, very easy. No, Reuben wouldn't get along in those days. Very easy distinction. So, nighttime, you can't see anything, right? You go to sleep. But on Shabbat, the holiday, the celebration, the meal takes place at night. That's when Shabbat starts. So there's a big mitzvah to make sure there's Shabbat candles. There's candles on the table. So much so that somebody doesn't have what to eat, they should mortgage their own clothing, put it in a pawn shop, as much as you could get from pawn shop nowadays, in those days, and get some oil and a wick to have Shabbat candles. If you have Hanukkah candles, sell your Hanukkah candles, get Shabbat candles. All these rules, why do they exist? Just to have shalom bayit, to have peace in the home. When you sit together with your family and you can see each other, that brings unity, that brings closeness, that brings a good atmosphere, a good feeling. That's shalom bayit, peace in the home. So the reason why we have that on Shabbat is in order to make peace. The second thing, Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, not only the salutation, but also the prayer. The prayer is recited according to what we know in our sources, that every person has 2 angels, 2 sets of angels escorting him, and good angels and bad angels, right? And the story goes, the Midrash says that if somebody walks in on Friday night, and the table is set, and the food is on the table, and everybody's smiling and wearing good clothes, so the good angel says, I wish it will be the same for next week. And the bad angel has to say amen, forced to say amen. But if a person walks into the house and there's no Shabbat, what are you talking about? What? Honey, I'm home. Who asked you to be home? What are you doing here? Right? And then the bad angel says, I wish it will be the same for next week. And the good angel is forced to say amen, unfortunately. Anyway, that's what we sing Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem is not just a salutation. Right? We hear that every Friday night. Shalom Aleichem. We sing that. We greet the angels. We say 3 times. 4 times. 3 of 4. It's not really up to peace. Right. Because you trust that they both synchronize to the right way. They both align to the right way. So we say Shalom Aleichem. Also, in Avit, in Ma'ariv, before we go upstairs to Kiddush, Ufros alenu Sukkot Shlomecha, and bring us into the Sukkah of your peace. Sukkot Shalom, Sukkah of Shalom. All these attributes, all these things exist over Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. And then again, that brings us back to the question, what really is that peace? What are we wishing for? What are we yearning for? What does God want from us to attain? Yes. You say Sukkot Shalom, right? You say that in the Ma'ariv, in the Ufos Alenu Sukkot Shlomecha. Yeah. This is the Sephardi style. When did you go to Sephardi shul? Really? They get they have good cakes, good cookies, carpets. You go to. He walked into a mosque last time. He didn't know the difference. No cookies in the mosque, by the way. You're in the right religion, Richard. In the mosque, they don't give you any refreshments. Okay, so what is that peace? So I'll tell you a little bit what we have today. Obviously, I can't define peace because like you said, it has so many definitions and so many meanings to everyone, every person. Elizabeth, who didn't come today, had sent me long texts over the meaning of peace for her. So I told her she should come and share it with everyone. And you'll be able to read it a little later. Anyway, peace is the opposite of solo, of going by yourself. Peace is the opposite of being alone. And when you have peace, it means that you have two different sources of energy, two different powers, two different strengths that are consolidated and are working together towards the same goal. And people, what is peace between people? People are different. It doesn't matter what. If you have a twin sister, right? You were a twin sister. 9 months you were together, twin sister. She's so different. I can tell you. I know her. I know you. She's so different than you. Okay? How much more so somebody who was brought up in a different household, in a different country maybe, speaks a different language from a different culture. How much of a gap there is to bridge between two people. So it could be soulmates. It could be people who work on projects together, collaborators. It could be work colleagues. It could be people you associate with, community members. Everyone has their way of looking at things. Everyone has their style. Everyone has their opinions, right, Richard? 2 Jews, how many opinions? 4. You said 3, now it's 4. Okay, you say 3, I say 4, it's 5. Okay. Okay, so what is peace? Peace is the ability to appreciate somebody else's standpoint and to see how both what you say and what they say contributes to the same goal. And that is very hard to get to. It's easy to write. It's nice to define it on paper, but we need heavenly blessings for that. Okay, we need divine interference to really make it work. People are wishing each other in Hebrew shalom. Why do we wish each other shalom? When we see somebody else, we know already. Okay, this guy, you get the whole. That's once the Rebbe explained why. We say, when we say Kiddush Levana, we say Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Shalom. You say someone, peace on you, and he says to you, on you peace, onto you peace. So you say something, the guy responds the opposite. I mean, what's wrong with you? I say something, just say the same. No, we always, but we have the word, peace on you peace. That's what they say. But we have the word, people are usually afraid when somebody else is in a conversation, if somebody else is in the room, somebody else takes part in a project, there's always this, it's natural, the natural feeling where they're taking away some of my space. They're taking away some of my ideas. They're taking away some of my attention. They're taking away something from me. And when we greet each other, that's before a conversation ever takes place. That's before we open up to each other. That's before we share ideas. We greet each other, we say shalom, peace, which is kind of odd, peace. Why? Whenever there's any interaction, we want to make sure we're both aligned to get peace out of this thing. And that's very difficult. So we see each other, we wave, shalom. What's your peace? What peace? Are you enemies? No, we're not enemies. Peace is not between enemies. Peace is the ability, the harmony, to bring two opinions. It doesn't have to be extreme opinions, but they're different because everyone has their opinion. And guess what? Sometimes we change our minds. We have opinions and then we have different opinions. And the same person, you need inner peace. but that's a different topic for not for today. You could have Richard will give you the number of his therapist to get inner peace, right? So yeah. So Shabbat Shalom. Also, another thing, people are always convinced that resources are limited, and if you have something that comes in the expense of mine, why is it so? Why can't we both have? Why is it so? Why there's always either you have it or I have it? It doesn't have to be like that. But people are like it. People, myself, I'm also like that. If you got it, that's probably on the expense of mine. So it's one big cake. You're taking. I'm sorry, I'm using cake as a parable, but don't get overexcited. There's one big cake. You take a share. You take something from me. That's wrong. That is wrong. You need peace to acknowledge that. Not only to practice it, just to acknowledge that. And that's the concept of Shabbat Shalom. We say Shalom as a greeting between people. Shabbat Shalom. Our sages explain that until the time of Shabbat, there was a competition between the creations of God. Everyone felt that they were prominent, they were superior, and the other was inferior. The night wanted there was going to be more dark. The day wanted it should be more light. And then there's obviously a time where the sunset, right? Or sunrise, right? Where the day ends and the night begins. Or the night ends and the day begins. That period of time, that's when Shabbat was introduced to the world. Shabbat is actually on the split of a second between Friday and Saturday, right? Friday, there's also, by the way, a time, it's called Ben Hashmashot, which literally means between suns, sun in plural. Why is between suns? It is the time between sunset and nightfall. Usually it's about 20 minutes. That's about, depends on what area and what's your longitude and latitude, that, the difference of the time between sunset and nightfall. Nightfall is Saturday. Sunset is no longer Friday. But you have that period of time between sunset and nightfall. That's called the twilight zone. Okay, Ben Hashmashot. So but there's some issues you take care with. You have to take with. So Shabbat Shalom. Why Shabbat Shalom? God said when He created the world could not exist. Every creature, every being was pulling to its direction. Everything wanted to be prominent. Everything wanted to be superior. And when God introduced Shabbat, He introduced peace. He introduced tranquility. You said tranquility. He introduced quietness. He introduces rest. Rest is a concept that requires peace. Because if you continue on working, you're pulling your end. When will you stop pulling? When somebody rings the bell and say, okay, that's it. Recess time, right? You like recess in your school? You like recess. Okay, recess. So God is ringing the bell, introducing Shabbat. Okay, like an ad, introducing. God is introducing Shabbat. Here is an example of a couple that lived and managed to get such harmony. Okay. First I forgot to tell you about the angels. Okay, this is a quote from Job. Dominion and fear are with him. He makes peace in his heights. And the Midrash Rabbah brings Michael is all snow, Michael, and Gabriel is all fire. Yet Michael does not extinguish Gabriel, nor does Gabriel. What is this word? Incinerate Michael. They are standing together in front of God, so they are able. God makes peace in His heights. So you say, Yosef Shalom, right? This line is a quote from Job. He says He makes peace in His heights. He makes peace in His heights. God is able to take two extremes and bring them together. And the reason for that is those archangels, those angels, one of them is fire, all fire. He's the minister of fire, is all fire. The other one is all snow, is the minister of snow. Or if you want heat and cold, two other extremes. And when they come together in front of God, they're able to unite themselves. They're able to.
Wasn't Michael an angel defeated the underworld? Michael's very famous.
All angels are famous. They have their.
He defeated the bad guys.
Okay, so you're saying with Lot, yeah. Michael came to cure Abraham. Gabriel came to get rid of these guys in Lot. Yeah. Each one has their role, their mission. And here's an example of a couple. Oh, by the way, I forgot another thing. Dogs. When dogs meet each other, you've seen that. You go to the park sometimes. They're always like, they're always thinking, he's taking my territory. So I don't know. I've never went into the psychology of it. I just remember growing up as a child. Somebody comes with a dog. There's another dog. There's going to be always something. There's no way that they're just going to ignore each other. They just don't have it, right? So I don't know. I'm not such an expert in animal psychology or anatomy, but there's such a thing where they think that each one takes the other's territory or the other's female or male, whatever. And there's barking and kind of mutual. Sometimes it's with anger. Sometimes it seems like a little more relaxed. I don't know how to explain that, but we don't want to be in that state. So here's the story from Yalkut Shimoni. There was once a pious man with a righteous wife. When the couple lost all their money, the man found work plowing a field where he met Elijah the prophet disguised as an Arab. You see that? Next time you meet an Arab, could be Elijah the prophet. Elijah said to him, you have 6 years of wealth coming to you. Do you want them now or at the end of your life? How do you know? Where did you... Oh, okay. I'm sorry. The man said to him, you are just, what did he say? Conjurer? What does that mean? Oh, well, that's not a bad thing to me. You have nothing to give me. Please go away and leave me in peace. Elijah came back to him again and again. The third time, the pious man said, let me consult with my wife. He went to his wife and said, this man has come to me 3 times to say that I have 6 years of wealth coming to me. He wants to know when I want them, now or at the end of life. She said, tell him, give you the money now. Very practical. What would you say, Richard? Okay. He went to tell this to Elijah, who said to him, go home. Even before you get to the gate of your front garden, you will see that you have been blessed. The couple's children had been playing in the dirt at their yard where they found enough money to support their family for 6 years. Could you go play in the dirt? I wanna get some. So they called their mother. She ran out to tell her husband the good news. Even before he got to the gate of their house, he immediately thanked God. What did his wife do? She said to him, God had been extremely kind to us, giving us all this money. Let's spend these 6 years helping others. Maybe then God will give us more. So they did. I think this is kind of a bad translation of the English, because the Hebrew, she was a little more delicate. She didn't say maybe God will give us more. She said maybe it's a good idea, but I guess translating it to English, I copied it from the internet. So people want to be practical. Maybe then he'll give us more. The pious man, at the end of 6 years, Elijah came and said, the time has come for me to take back what I gave you. The pious man said, when I accepted the money, I consulted with my wife. Now it's time to give it back. Let me consult with her again. Wow. Nice. Were you reading from it, or how do you? Okay. Yeah. Very good. Jewish education. So he went there and said, the man has come to take back what he gave us. She told him, if you find people who will use the money better than we did, you should take it. God knew about all good things they had done for others while they had wealth and decided to give them even more. As it says in Isaiah, the fruit of righteousness will be peace. The question, so this is where we're talking about a couple who maintain peace, usually, and that happens more than often, when wealth hits a family or a person. Normally, it could be after a death of, a passing of a parent, a grandparent, and rich aunt, that, there's inheritance and people start fighting, if it's the siblings between themselves or within the family. Usually wealth makes people a little more egocentric, a little more concerned about themselves. That's the normal nature of rich people. Richard is an exception. He's wealthy and still cares about everyone else. I say that with a full heart. I know it's true. I really know it is. And really, it requires a lot of strength. This is a story that's brought about people who found wealth and together with that found each other. You see, the concept of the story was the fact that he went to consult with his wife. He went to consult with his wife on the first dance and also on the second time around. He said, when you gave it to me, there was a decision that we made together, my wife and I. You want to come and take it? It's also a decision we make together. Meaning this person, this individual, this couple had brought peace into their life to such an extent that they take decisions together, and that helped them to stay as one. And guess what? They were able to find good use in that wealth and to remain with that wealth. He said, either you take it now or you take it later. Oh, but he was limited. He said, you got 6 years, right? The thing, it says, you have 6 years, right? Yeah, he says you have... Yeah, well, 6 years, that means there's an ending to it. So that he realized there was an ending. Uh, Interesting. And the Hebrew version does say, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. The Hebrew version does say of it that he has to return it. And really, people are stubborn. And we know, like we said, two Jews, three opinions. How do you find a way to live in peace? How do you find the ability to form such a communication channel, to form such a cooperation that it won't, not only that life's occurrences would not what's it called, shatter it, but quite the contrary, would strengthen it. What is the foundation of everything? So let's come back to where we are now. We are in the day before Lag BaOmer. Tomorrow night is already Lag BaOmer, and we discussed that last week, and also the week before Lag BaOmer is a day that has very happy connotation, right? This is the day when they stopped dying. The students, the disciples of Rabbi Akiva, after the time when they had the disease. What is it called, Richard, again? Diphtheria? Yeah, diphtheria. They had the disease, and they stopped dying on that day. It is also the day when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai had passed. And if you just take that for a matter of fact, the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Khatam Sofer asks a question. He says, where did we find to make a festival on a passing day of a righteous person? This is, by the way, a real picture from Meron. This takes place tomorrow night. This is not from tomorrow. It's from last year or the day before. 500,000 people, Josh. It's a very small place, and they're expecting 500,000 visitors from the world. On the mountain, you don't see the mountain. You see black hats. You don't see a mountain. Yeah, that's the author. You didn't get to Meron? I thought you went there. You did. That's a good question. Yeah, they do chemical. It's called chemical toilets. It's called, yeah. Let's not be too elaborative over that part of the. Yeah, each one brings something from the house, and anyway. Yeah. That's the mountain of Meron. So they're expecting 500,000 people, and it's a big festival. And we said about the stopping the ending to the passing of the students of Rabbi Akiva, but with the passing of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, what makes it such a holiday? What makes it such a festival? And really, what we touched upon it last week and the week before. It's the fact that this disease that happened with the students of Rabbi Akiva is no coincidence, and they were people who were convinced that they were right, each one in their way, and out of their care towards their friends or there was someone else, they did everything in their might to correct the wrongdoing or the wrong thinking of another person. So they came from a level of love and saying, listen, I care for you so much. I think what you just said is wrong. I think you shouldn't act like this. You shouldn't say like this. I think you shouldn't even think like that because you're wrong. Because I love you, because I care about you. But unfortunately, with all the, I love you and I care about you, the bottom line is you're wrong. So if you make it nice, you put a bouquet of flower and a chocolate thing, nice. But the note would say, honey, you're wrong. I don't think the reception would be so well. You bring a bouquet of flowers, a bouquet of roses, and a nice chocolate, those hard chocolates from Belgium, and the note would say, you're wrong, and in bold red letters. That I'm not sure the message would have such a great impact overall. I mean, the chocolates could be nice, but anyway, so they were saying to each other, you're wrong. Out of concern, out of love, out of care. What? Yeah, the note was the problem, Mindy. I know you're after the chocolate. Sitting next to Richard, of course. So this stopped on Lag BaOmer. Guess what? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the sage that we celebrate his passing tomorrow, was a disciple of Rabbi Akiva. He was one of the few that survived. And Rabbi Akiva, the one who lost 24,000 students, instead of getting into despair, he realized something was wrong. He realized it was something either in his teaching or the way it was perceived by his disciples. And instead of being, being in complete despair over what had happened and getting depressed over, he said, I'm starting again. I'll get a few people and I'll make it work now for these guys to make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes that had happened with the other 24,000. One of them was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He was one of his students. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was not only the one who survived that great plague. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the correction to that plague. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the symbol of love and caring to each other. And we're going to see how exactly is that. So remember, yes?
This is kind of a weird question. We'll give it a try. Okay. So 24,000 people passed away.
Correct.
That's a catastrophe.
In all scale.
Okay, so how do they explain the parents and mothers of these people? Also, who's thinking of living in the street and living on the floor? How do you house the 24,000 people?
Well, they had some, study institutions, some yeshiva, some. 995. No.
Burial too. And those things 24 hours as well. Do we talk about that, or is this
I don't know if these details are elaborated over in the Gemara, but I mean, some things you just take for granted, where they would probably have a way to maybe the fact that it was such a disease that was contagious, and maybe the people who died, they weren't put in quarantine or anything, and the people who deal with them got also the same virus, and that led to, obviously you could find different reasons for physically being ill, but you could see that the number 24,000 is such a scale, and it all happened in such a short while. There's a meaning to it. So even if you find the physical concern, the physical reasons that brought this disease, or the fact that people didn't know it was contagious and didn't take precautions over that. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is, obviously their relatives had. In the Omer time, those are the days. These are the days that until tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is the day when they stopped dying. So Rabbi Shimon S-H-I Bar B-A-R Yochai. Yochai is Y-O-C-H-A-I. You're welcome. So we touched upon it last week and the week before, and because of that, I remembered I need to send you the presentation. So I sent you the presentation today. I didn't send it to you. I forgot. Okay. Do I have your email? sloss at Mac, iCloud, something. Where? Okay, I'll send it to you online, the presentation. So because of that, remember the counting of the Omer, the self-refinement, we've had our share of understanding and trying to understand what it is. Every week symbolizes one attribute between kindness, discipline, glory, and this is now it's Hod. What is Hod? I forgot. Splendor. Splendor is this week's Sfirah, and we were talking about it with regards to how do we attain self-refinement? What do we have all these days for? Every day to contemplate at something else, and that brings us to where I wanted to go with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and that ability to bridge gaps and to bring real peace, visible and sustainable peace. And let's start with the historical story from the Gemara, and here we get to the story of Jesus. Okay, here it is. It's Talmud Tractate 107. I'll send you the source so you can look it up yourself. The sages taught, always have left hand drive sinners away, and the right draw them near, so that sinner will not totally be in despair of atonement. This is unlike Elisha. Elisha was a disciple of Elijah the prophet. Remember Elijah the prophet? We just spoke about him. His disciple Elisha had an aide, a helper, also someone with him, who pushed away Gehazi. Gehazi was his helper with his two hands and caused him to lose his share in the world to come. And unlike Yoshua ben Pachia, who pushed away Jesus the Nazarite with his two hands. I skipped that part of Elijah and Gehazi. Elisha and Gehazi. You could read it out yourself. I wanted to get to Yeshua. Yoshua, and that one was Yeshua. Yeah, Yeshua. What is the incident involving Yoshua ben Pachia? The Gemara relates when King Yanai was killing the sages. Yoshua ben Pachia and Jesus, his student, went to Alexandria of Egypt. Yoshua ben Pachia was a very prominent rabbi. Jesus was the best student. He was going with him everywhere. And they had to run away to Alexandria of Egypt when there was peace between King Yanai and the sages. Shimon ben Shattach sent a message to Yoshua ben Pachia, from me, Jerusalem, the holy city, to you, Alexandria of Egypt, my sister. The message was coded. You see, they had what's it called, cryptology back in those days. My sister, my husband is located among you, and I sit desolate. The head of the sages of Israel is out of the country, and Jerusalem requires his return. That's the message he gave him. The war is over. We need you to come back. We need a leader. Yoshua ben Pachia understood the message, arose, came, and happened to arrive at a certain inn on the way to Jerusalem. They treated him, the people at the inn, with great honor. Yoshua ben Pachia said to his disciple, how beautiful is this inn? Jesus, his student, said to him, but my teacher, the eyes of the innkeeper's wife are narrow. Tutot. She was Asian. I don't know, that's my translation. Asian. Anyway, Yoshua ben Pachia said to him, wicked one, do you involve yourself with regard to that matter? The appearance of a married woman? He produced 400 shofarot and ostracized him. Yoshua ben Pachia's reaction to Jesus was, granted, a bit overwhelmed, but his expectation from his disciple, again, this is a miscommunication purely. Yoshua ben Pachia, the rabbi, is saying, oh, this place is so nice, how good they treat us. His students, Jesus, understands that he wants to give a praise to the woman who is serving them. And he says to him something about that woman. It didn't necessarily involve anything that's not modest. Her eyes, her looks, and yet Yoshua ben Pachia, after all these years in exile with his student, thought that his student would not be looking at women, judging their looks, having comments about their appearances, be that good or bad. We're not sure whether that was a good comment or a bad comment, but Yoshua ben Pachia felt he was flabbergasted by his student, and he said, you go, you just leave. I want nothing to do with you after that. Again, apparently it doesn't seem such a big deal. Let's look at the story continues. Jesus came before Yoshua ben Pachia several times and said to him, accept our, which means my repentance. Yoshua ben Pachia took no notice of him. He just ignored him. One day, Yoshua ben Pachia was reciting Shema, and Jesus came before him with the same request. Yoshua ben Pachia intended to accept his request and signaled him with his hand to wait until he completed his prayer. Jesus did not understand the signal and thought, he is driving me away. He went and stood a brick upright to serve as an idol, and he bowed to it. Yoshua ben Pachia then said to Jesus, repent. Jesus said to him, this is the tradition that I received from you. Whoever sins and causes the masses to sin is not given the opportunity to repent. And the masters say, Jesus performed sorcery, incited Jews to engage in idolatry, and led Israel astray. Had Yoshua ben Pachia not caused him to despair of atonement, you would not have taken that path of evil. Christianity could have been avoided if just somebody would not get a gesture right. If a comment that was made was it supposed to be made, was not made, the whole Christianity would never exist. Look at what happened. Yoshua ben Pachia, a righteous person, a pious person, a great person, a prominent sage, a scholar, a wonderful individual, has a student. He expects his student to be this level. Unfortunately for him, his student was a little bit less than what he expected, or he was at that level, but there was a miscommunication between the two. He says to him, his way of ostracizing him, leave me, don't come here. He tries. Maybe Yoshua ben Pachia was trying to make Jesus regret fully of what he did. Maybe he wanted to make him think of the implications. Here you look at appearance of woman, and eventually you'll take that a few steps away. She's married to someone else. She's nothing to do with you. But if you start like that, it could be a slippery slope, right? When people sometimes criticize me in front of me when I don't shake hand to women, when I don't touch any woman. And this would be accepted as not accepted. This would be criticized. How come you not touch me? How could you not? And I'd say very simply, I'd like to guard myself. I want to protect myself. No touching. No touching means no touching whatsoever. regardless of affection, regardless of business, no handshaking, no nothing. I know very well I'm not supposed to touch anyone outside my mother, my wife, my daughter, my grandmother. That's all. That's where he gets to. Or my granddaughter, God willing. Granddaughter, you're working on one? Yeah. Sister, yeah, sorry. Sister as well. So that's a way of, taking precautions. That's a way of keeping myself safe. Trust me. And you could have my word for it. Someone who acts like that, there's no way for them to find themselves on the newspaper. I don't want to elaborate. There's no way for them to, if somebody really holds those rules. Anyway, maybe he thought Jesus was that level. Maybe he thought Jesus needed more to come to him. But the sad part is that he wanted to accept him. But he did a gesture in his hands, like kind of, I don't know what exactly the gesture is, the Talmud, and also by the way, the bold font is the Talmud, and the not bold font is the translation or the explanation that's brought in the Talmud. That's a online version of English Talmud. Anyway, the story is that he went completely off, and we know history, we know what followed, and therefore our sages say, always have the left hand drive sinners away, and the right hand draw them near. And peace, if you want to hear from that, is the combination of rejection and embracement. Yoshua ben Parchia had to reject what he thought was improper in his disciple. But together with that, he had to embrace him. And he had to find a path to his heart to explain to him what was wrong with his doing and how to really fix and how to correct what had happened. And if you wish, I heard once from the rabbi in Hong Kong, he told me once that we say small ducha, yamin mekerev, the left hand. By the way, the left hand, and it's not written, it is precisely so. The left, normally by most people, you're a righty, your left hand is weaker than your right hand. So on your weaker hand is what you push away. But on your stronger arm, on your stronger hand is what you bring closer. Okay? So it's always the left hand is the one that rejects. Rejection should never be at full strength. Even when rejection is needed, even when reprimanding is needed, even when ostracizing is needed, it should always be with your left hand, which means not your maximum strength. Whereas embracement, bringing closer, drawing near, should be with your right hand. That should be your way of bringing. And unfortunately, Yoshua ben Parchia did not have that in mind, or did not practice that in the right way. And we know the outcome, we know the implications of all that. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, though, on the contrary, he was able to find the line between the two, to have rejection of negativity and embracement of positivity at the very same time. And we know how it was. There's another story. I didn't bring it here. There's another story about the previous Rebbe brought from Rabbi Nissan. Rabbi Nissan was a great teacher. And they lived in that village. I don't know if you know the story of Yitzchak Shaul HaShovav. You know that story? Shaul Yitzchak HaShovav. Shaul Yitzchak the naughty. Anyway, Rabbi Nissan was a teacher, and he was a well-loved teacher by his students. Everybody loved him. He told stories, and he was fascinating, and he was eloquent, and everybody. But sometimes, you know how it is. People invest outside their house, outside their home, but within, that's not always easy. So he had a child that wasn't really a good kid, and he heard that his name was Shaul Yitzchak HaShovav. Anyway, it's a story. Shaul Yitzchak, I think. So the son of Rabbi Nissan, the great teacher, his son was abusing animals. He used to do all kinds of things to animals, doing kinds of tricks. That the kids would laugh and, do things that were not proper. And he called him home after hearing what had happened, or what used to happen, not only once on one occasion, but as a serial thing. And he told him that he has to feel the pain that he causes these animals. The animals cannot report him what is the pain, but he has to feel the pain. And he asked him to lie down on the table, and he hurt him. And of course, the son cried over the father beating him, and he went outside the house crying. And when he came back to the house, he saw something very weird. He saw his father sitting on the floor and crying like a baby. And the father was crying because he was forced to hurt his son. He was forced to cause pain to his son. And that part of the story is what made the son correct his ways. In other words, the actual beating, now everybody knows that. You hurt a child, not only it's not productive, it's counterproductive. 100% of the times, not 99.9. Counterproductive in every single thing any hurting, any beating, counterproductive. Completely. Whatever you want to accomplish is going to get the exact opposite. It's going to sever your relationship. It's going to sever your children, your family, your spouse, everything. But in those days, nevertheless, Reb Nisan, after hitting his child, was completely in tears because he had to cause pain to his son. And those tears that were shed, that's what made the son change his ways. That's what made the son realize that indeed this is not the way to go. And the one who holds on to this is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai stood in the head of a group of students that used to study all day and all night. It's called in Hebrew Toratam Umanutam, which means their work or their profession is Torah. They are professional Torah scholars. That could be a nice title. Professional Torah scholars. Everybody says professional this. You could print a card for that for sure. Rabbi Shimon, professional Torah scholar. Anyway, so they were professional Torah learners. What did they do day and night? Learning Torah. And he was forced to run away. The Romans were after him because he was such a great leader and because he was such influence over the people. He had to run away, hide in the cave. Hiding in the cave, that led him to another extreme. Until now, he used to learn Torah day and night, but he still had some interaction with anyone, with people outside. Now hiding in the cave for 12 years. And then when he comes out of the cave, he didn't know anything, right? Learning Torah is all his life, him and his son. 12 years, they came out of the cave, and they're seeing people in the marketplace, running, selling, buying, trading, bargaining. And they're like, what are you guys wasting your time over? Everybody needs to learn Torah. And they said, well, Rabbi, we got to do business here. No. And guess what? They were causing damages to people. By their words, they were uttering, what are you guys doing? They made people lose. They made people, so much so, the description in the Talmud is they burned. They looked at something and it burnt. They looked at something, they gave their eyes in it and it burnt. So a heavenly voice came out. It said, Le'achriv olami yatzatem, did you come out of the cave to destroy my world? Back in the cave, you two. So they go back to the cave. They go back to the cave for another year. Mind you, another year, 13 years in the cave. In that year, Rabbi Shimon find the balance between his own study Torah and between what other people's needs are. The cave burned? No, in the cave. So eating, they had, God made a miracle, a carob tree. Was a carob, yeah. Figs? Yeah, you're right. They had what did they have? A well, a stream of water that was by the cave. It wasn't just a regular cave. It was, this is serious professional cave for professional Torah learners.
Windows in the cave?
No windows as far as I know. Wi-Fi though. They had Wi-Fi. Well, 12 years. Come on, Josh, 12 years with no Wi-Fi. And a charger and an outlet, of course. They were not only did not have clothes, they only had one set of clothes. So they sat the whole week. They dig a hole in the ground. They wear their clothes. I thought on Shabbos they wear their clothes every day. They dig a hole in the ground and they sat covered with dust, like stand basically, not sitting, covered with dust, and that's how they learn Torah. That's how they were. On Shabbos, so my son says, in morning prayer, they used to wear their clothes. Anyway, this 13th year is what made Rabbi Shimon who he was. He comes out of the cave after the 13th year, of another year, and his son didn't get it. Again, like, what are you guys doing with it? And it says, everywhere, Rabbi Elazar, his son, everywhere his son caused damage, Rabbi Shimon used to bring remedy. Not only that, Rabbi Shimon realized what people were and what were they after. And he found the balance between his Torah learning and their possibilities and their opportunities and so on and so forth. Not only did he not reject, if there was something wrong to reject, yes, it was rejected, but embracing was also more important. Not only that, he was actively looking, where could he benefit someone? Where could he do good? Where could he bring more into the world? So the Rebbe brings, Rabbi Shimon and his son were in the cave for 13 years. They were completely secluded and were also deprived of fulfilling some of the mitzvot. This all caused that upon leaving the cave, he was asking and inquiring out, where can I help with? One needs correction, refinement, which is the complete opposite of seclusion. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai brought peace to the world, and that is why we celebrate tomorrow night. The reason we celebrate, he passed away. Passing away was never a reason for celebration. He said on the day of his passing, I would like this day to be celebrated. He said on the day of his passing, that's what he said. He said, this day is not a sad day. It's when my soul leaves my body and my soul gets united with God completely. Oh, good. Really? What did you study? Could you share with us? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Anyway, so Rabbi Shimon brought these two lines into completion, rejection and embracement together, rejecting what's wrong, but together with that, and always rejecting on the left hand, on the weak hand, on the strong hand, it's pulling inwards and bringing people closer to him and to each other. There's a story that happened in June of 1993. Chanit Kikus, yeah. Chanit Kikus was a lady who was in the south city of Ofakim in Israel. You hear that name sometimes, they get missiles thrown at them. And she was waiting in the bus stop, and she never made it home. And the police thought somebody had kidnapped her, and unfortunately also did bad things to her. And they found some evidence, partial evidence, that ties it to a Bedouin guy in the name of El Abid. And he used to work at the city of Beersheva's garbage collecting department, like the garbage truck, right? They usually go at night. They collect industrial garbage and other stuff. So, and they accused him of the murder of this girl. And what they did is they put him in a prison. You know, one of the ways of I don't know if you visited prisons before, but one of the ways I wish you would never. I mean, I visited not as an inmate, but as someone who tries to help inmates. One of the ways of police and law enforcement is to put someone in a cell with someone else, and that someone else is an informer. They would try to get a conversation with him, not as an interrogation of why you're here, what happened, I had the same incident, making up a story and trying to get a story from there, a few details. Anyway, he was sitting with another person who was an informer, and that person managed to get enough details to compose the story together, to bring it back to the police and to the judges, and they accused him of the murder of this girl. And they sentenced him for life in prison. Later, this individual, asked the lawyer. He realized what had happened, that this informer's thing and he said that this is not true, and he was making up a story. I'm making my story, and he decided to withdraw back his words, so to speak, and also there was another thing that was a contradiction with. He said that he was in a certain place, but the body of this girl was found in a different place, quite removed from the original location. And he managed to persuade his lawyers, most likely, managed to persuade the persecution to revisit the case. And the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Justice in Israel, had brought the case towards Israel's Attorney General. And Israel's Attorney General said that indeed, he has to be behind bars, but she shortened his punishment. Instead of life in prison, 12 years, 15 years, or whatever it is. And what is the reason? Because he says, reading the file, I could see that the conviction was not unanimous. That some of the judges still claimed, because of the lack of forensic evidence, still claimed that it wasn't his doing. It wasn't him. Some of them, they accepted testimony. I don't know how it goes. In different countries, sometimes forensic evidence is stronger. Sometimes testimony, witnesses are stronger. But she revisited the case and says, since the conviction was not unanimous, then I will shorten the punishment of this individual. And indeed, in many countries, when you're talking about conviction of murder cases and all these kind of heavyweight cases, you're seeking to be unanimous. You're seeking, right, the jury or the judge or whatever it is. But in Jewish tradition, in fact, it can never be unanimous. Look at what Maimonides says about. It says like this: when all the judges of a Sanhedrin is the Jewish Supreme Court, begin the judgment of a case involving capital punishment and say that the defendant is liable, he is, what's the word? Exonerated. There must be some who seek to exonerate him and argue on his behalf, but yet the majority hold him liable, only then he is executed. And Maimonides lays out a very interesting foundation. And he says truth is only reached through argument. In other words, you have a case that's so clear, so obvious, right? This is a case, everyone knows what happened. It was in the media, there were cameras all over the place, everybody knows. The defendant is brought to it's a waste of time. Everybody knows. Maimonides says, you can't execute him over that. If it's unanimous, it can't be. There must be something that you're missing. Maimonides says, you have to have an argument. You have to have a way of trying to prove, trying to argue. He says the only way the intellect works, the only way the mind works, if you are challenged, if you're challenged by something, you say something, somebody else challenges you. How could this be? How could that be? You're trying to find. He says truth is only revealed through those arguments. That is the only way, the only tool that you have to reach truth. If everything is so crystal clear, something is wrong. Something is missing. There must be something that you can't really hold. There has to be a process where some of the judges, remember this is 70 judges, Richard, Jewish Supreme Court, 70 judges. Yeah, that's Jewish Supreme Court. And each one has to know that much knowledge. We're talking about big people, okay? And we're talking of a case that's so clear, crystal clear to them, that they all unanimously agree that this person is liable. You can't do that. You have to have some people trying to argue, and only through that argument you're able to find truth, and you're able to find. And that is a definition of peace. Peace is consolidation. Peace is cooperation. Peace is to take two different ideas and bring them together and find out what is the truth through peace. And that's where peace transcends love. Because sometimes when we love each other, what is love? We tend to agree with each other. That's what love is. You say, I consent, I agree, I think you're right, I think you know what you're saying. And that's wonderful. When love is needed, there you go, you got love. But that's not peace. I mean, we can have love, and we're asking love and peace. Peace is, you're thinking this way, I'm thinking this way, let's find the right answer together. Let's have peace between us. If we have peace between us, the love, this is like a vessel for love. The love could prevail when peace is there. But when peace is missing, nothing is there. That love is just superficial. It's just because you don't want to argue with, you don't want, you just, whatever, you're right. You know how it is? Oh, okay, you're right. You know, how right could that be? Obviously. Nothing is more wrong than that. So this could be impacted in several things, right? Torah study, we brought the story of Reish Lakish, right? Reish Lakish that died, and Rabbi Yochanan, his companion, they were studying together. And Rabbi Yochanan, after Reish Lakish, left or died, he couldn't live without him. Why? Because everything he used to say, Reish Lakish used to ask him a question, and he gives him an answer. He asks him 7 questions on it, and 24 questions. There was never, yes man. Yes man here. Everybody's nodding, and everybody's saying it. There was never such a thing. He couldn't take it. Torah study, or even any study, specifically Torah study, has to come through looking at something from different angles. And In fact, when somebody says different than you, it's not because they want to diminish you. It's because they want to fertilize you. They want to be fruitful. They want to try and find the conclusion together. So they're challenging you. You sure you know what you're saying? Try deeper. Try harder. Get more evidence. Try to find different stories where this had happened. So Torah study. Children education, the same thing, right? We know that we spoke about it not last week, but it was a few months ago. We spoke about it that Abraham had 2 children. One was going this way, the other was going that way. Isaac had 2 children, one this way, the other. The only one who had really success in his bringing up of kids is Jacob. Jacob had 12 children. We had Abraham is kindness. Isaac is discipline or judgment or justice. Jacob is glory. To combine the combination of both. He had 12 kids. Guess what? 12 out of 12. 1 out of 2 is not so great. 1 out of 2. 12 out of 12. That's serious. How did he make it? How did he get 12 out of 12? Because he combined justice and kindness. Discipline and loving kindness. He had the combination of both. So 12 out of 12. And of course, with the husband and wife, we know that really what really is challenging in a relationship is what also fulfills the relationship. It is bridging the gaps and is taking people that are coming from different worlds and are bringing them together. And that's, people say, when we recite, you say that, Ruben, in the Kaddish, we say that every day in Shmoneh, Oseh Shalom B'Momav, he who makes peace in the heights. What do? We take 3 steps backward. And you say, you want to gain peace. You want to take a few steps backward. It's so natural. You say something, somebody challenges you. What do? You take 3 steps forward. Who are you to tell me? And what do you think you know? Right? But you want to say make peace? Take 3 steps backward. Give room to a different opinion. Consolidate. Try to cooperate. Try to understand that the other person is not trying to diminish you, is trying to help you. Sometimes they don't know it themselves. Sometimes they think they're challenging you. But if you're someone like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, you understand the other person is not challenging. Even if they don't know, they think they're challenging me, but they're not. What did they do? They're able to open up a window to see the reality from a different angle. And that's why people are different than each other. Our faces are different. Our minds are different. Our opinions are different. And again, you could be brought up in the same family, in the same community, with the same parents, with the same background, and you still have different views of life, right? That's very natural. How much more so if you come from a different family, a different background, a different country, a different culture. How much more so you have a different view on the world. The fact that it's different is what makes it unique. And that is where peace is needed. Now, to say that it's easy, I'm not saying it's easy. To say that it's achievable, surely it is. It's just a matter of looking at things the way they are and basically the ability to find the common denominator, and not only the common denominator, but also what makes us so special is the fact that we're different, and we consolidate it to one idea, and that's how we solve problems, by the way. That's how we find solutions to different things, is by working together. How do you like that for your ending class?
Did you type it in at the live webinar part? You typed it in?
I typed in the whole thing, not only this one. But what happened? Did I have a typo? What happened? Tomorrow is like over, Mandy. Are you coming?
Yeah.
I'll send you an email. Look at that. Look at
It's just unbelievable how knowledgeable you are.
Me? I'm not knowledgeable.
It's so beautiful.
No.
And then of all that, at the end of all that, basically, it's you have to make peace. We have peace when we all understand each other.